this what it should be, especially if we're introducing it early, because it's not like the character has transitioned fully into this cyborg or anything. He's just interested at the moment in dwarven technology. The other thing that we're trying to avoid is stacks and charges at the moment, because there are a lot of them on the humans, and in any way that we can, we'd like to offload that into another mechanic, something that appears on the field differently, like summons, for instance. Because if you have a game with a whole bunch of classes, and each of those classes has a unique stack or charge that they can put on someone, oftentimes in battle, after like the third or fourth turn, you'll have people with 8 different charges or stacks on them, which is hell for the player. Because I don't want to read through everything that everyone has on their heads, and even if I can assess it at a glance, if there are 8 things working on someone, there's no way that I'm optimally deciding based on what they have on them what I should be using. It's more of a sort of overall, okay, I kind of get what's happening with them. I can interact with them in this way. So we're narrowing it down. We're narrowing down what this tertiary thing could be by saying that we don't want it to be a stack or a charge. Um, we also don't want it to be a stat buff, because stat buffs, there's I think a highlight that talks about this, my opinion on
It's
it.
part of the Cabretto.
Okay, good. Yeah, stat buffs are not good. I'll leave it at that. You can go check out the video if you'd like. What are you thinking, Logan? Where do you think this should go?
Man, I'll be truthful right now, I don't have any idea.
Well, that's okay. I don't either. Uh,
But it's okay not to have any ideas.
well, I'm summoning help from our chat. Uh, well, it doesn't have to be the tertiary. We could figure that out later. Generally, you want to introduce that early because it's the thing that's no. Throbot
it,
says no. Cute.
it's like with the Cavalier's movement or the Cabretto's HP damage. Something
Feign
that,
damage or
or
max damage. Yeah, you're right.
yeah, it's something that's touched on in the beginning and then drawn together at the end.
Right. Maybe it has a callback at some point. What kind of help do you need? I overheard. Um, we're trying to figure out what the secondary or tertiary mechanic for this splicer would be, because we've got a pretty good base for him so far, kind of what we want him to be doing and how we want him to be interacting. What we can't decide is what kind of character this guy is. I mean, Logan just utilized the Cabaretto as an example. I think it's a good one because when you're looking at the cab, rogues tend to want to go after someone and kill them dead permanently. So we kind of took the idea of HP manipulation and spread it across the, well, all facets of the kit, but it became this tertiary kind of um, over mechanic. Maybe a secondary. I don't know. We never went through and analyzed where exactly the mechanics were on the Cabaretto, where they lay, I guess. But if I had to say it, I think max HP would be a tertiary mechanic. This class, it's not clear how it's going to be killing people. It just wants to proliferate. It wants to build. It wants to discover and evolve. And perhaps that's what we need to do, is we need to make it so that the splicer himself also wants to transform or evolve. But how to do that without stacks, that's the question. Also, how to do that without having to create a whole new set of animations. To, like, let's say hypothetically that we created an ability where he could sacrifice a whole bunch of these little guys to build himself up and then ascend to a new form. Now we have to create a secondary set of animations for everything that he'd want to do. Unless he just, no. Okay. So the reason that that doesn't work, the reason that I hit a line there or a wall there, is because I started thinking about what might be interesting is if instead of having to do the animations, he could just encase himself in metal and then he couldn't be dealt damage and he couldn't deal damage, but you couldn't interact with them. And then I realized that, um, and it was a very quick realization. It wasn't anything like super long, but basically his rank 5 is doing the same thing exactly that that would be doing. And it's not yielding you any immediate benefit. Generally, if you're going to be sacrificing these things, it needs to be to interact with the enemy team in some way, to buff your team in some way. Tertiary effect of building things is building waste. Interesting. Byproduct is waste. Well, that'll be sort of something that we sort of look at with the Blight Martyr. I'm not sure if we want to get
Yeah.
too much into waste products yet on this class, though I think it is certainly something that's interesting. If we had to connect something to our game with waste, I think it would be poison.
Yeah.
But you can kind of see where that might get us somewhere. So let's see. You're sacrificing these things. What do you get from it? Are you reforging yourself at this point? Probably not. Are you
Maybe you're you're sacrificing them, scrapping them, and making something else out of them.
right? But what though? That's the question. Because I mean, we could create new things, but we've already got at rank 3. We're already going to have two different things that are interesting that are going to be doing interesting sort of adjustments or creating interesting sort of adjustments um, with our little guys that we're summoning. And so if we're sacrificing little guys and the resource for those things, little guys, then I guess the playstyle that we're creating then is one in which you're either going all out on creating guys and feeding them to your throwers, or you're going all out on spawning guys and feeding them to yourself.
Yeah, because what if you're using them to give your? What if you rip off your arm, and just make yourself a robot arm out of the scrap?
Right, but then it's animations.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's the issue. I was thinking about that. It just gets down to being animation stuff. But I kind of like the idea of feeding yourself to your machines because you die, it doesn't matter. So you can feed yourself to your machines and they can reconstruct you. So what do they want? So you can feed your machines to. So it'll be a two-way street. You can feed yourself to your machines like prosthesis. Yes. You can feed yourself to your machines. They can sacrifice. Be sacrificed to you. So feeding flesh would work in much the same way as a rank as a little mechanism. So let's say you're running out of things to give to the thrower. You can just like feed it 20% of your health. Boom.
Hmm.
Then it does kind of become like a health management class, but I really like the idea of it because it doesn't matter if you die. So um,
It's almost like you just want to kill yourself as fast as possible.
yeah, to proliferate out your setup, get your setup started. Blood tech, yeah. It's kind of blood tech for sure. Feed HP to throwers to have them throw. Feed HP to spawners to have them spawn.
What are the throwers throwing when you're giving them HP?
Parts of you.
God. Good. It just robot walks over, rips off your arm, and chucks it at the enemy. That's
Flesh.
psychological damage right there.
They would infuse it with like machine or flesh slash machine hybrid actions would be buffed versions of their regular actions. So if they threw your arm, it would deal more damage than if they had thrown just a regular mechanism or something. So there is a real incentive. And if you feed them your arm and they're spawning things, maybe it spawns two instead of
So maybe
one.
that's what the rank 2 basic is. Is that you're
Sacrificing
ripping your
stuff?
arm off.
Well, the problem is that you don't have the things yet. You don't have the guys that you get at rank 3. No, we lost Logan. Oh, and he's back. Okay, good.
Yeah, so what I was saying was, I don't know if you got this, that maybe that's what the rank 2 basic is it's you're ripping whatever off and giving it to one of your things.
The issue is that
It doesn't exist until rank 3.
right. Now, we could just switch it so that rank 3 comes at rank 2, and rank 3 is the basic.
There's nothing wrong with that, but it does kind of break our pattern.
Well, we've done it before. The issue is I don't know if it's necessary yet.
Yeah, we can figure out something else probably.
I do kind of want it to be this duality where you're able to sacrifice yourself, but you're also able to sacrifice your machines. But maybe it shouldn't be that. Maybe it should just be that you're constantly sacrificing yourself to your machines, not for any benefit of your own, but to proliferate them. I think that's a more interesting identity than the other way around. So yeah, I'm actually behind switching the basic up to rank 3. Okay. So to your machines, period. Bold that. Okay, so this guy is just, very single-mindedly working toward this goal. The question then becomes, do we need that passive for the death passive to come at rank 4? Because you're killing yourself very quickly doing that sort of thing with rank 3.
Right.
You have no way of staying alive at this point.
But what could we put at rank 4?
Something that sustains you, but you won't need it when you get to rank 5.
Yeah.
Okay, so that answers that question. Something else to bring up at this meeting. Okay. Yep. Alright, well, got the first 4 abilities.
Yeah, vaguely.
Vaguely. Kind of know what they're going to do, how they'll interact. So what's the secondary mechanic here? If you're sacrificing your life to make these things go, then this is going to have to restore you to full health if they kill something.
Yeah, that would be hurtful on anyone other than this character.
Yeah. Well, I think welcome. Anything big happen? Shanty, we've been designing through the Splicer. Uh, we've gotten the first 4 ranks or so. I know it doesn't say that here or have them in any sort of way that you can read them, but we've got quite a bit of text that we've developed. We're also taking questions anytime that you want. If you want to ask any, um, we're trying to discover what the secondary mechanic of this class might be, and I think we found it, but now we've lost our tertiary mechanic, which could just be spawning in general. You act as a spawn conduit as well. Because that's kind of what I mean. Basically, if our primary mechanic is summons, our secondary mechanic is sacrifice, and our then our tertiary mechanic should be perhaps that you act as like a point booster on the field. Whenever you're out, all the things are running much more smoothly than they ordinarily would.
I thought about that.
You're kind of like the oil that's greasing all of the gears.
But I mean, the oil's your blood.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go ahead and throw that down. You are the oil that greases the gears. Tertiary. Actually, we can probably take this naming list and put it down to 8-point font, given that it's not super pertinent. Yeah, basically the splicers developed into this. The mechanic of the splicer is that you try and build up as many summons as you can before you die. And then if your summons can kill someone while you're dead, not your allies killing something that your summons put very low, but your summons actually killing something, an enemy, which might be harder in PvP than it is in PvE.
Mm.
So we'll have to balance it for PvP and worry about the PvE implications later. If they kill something, then you come back to life at full HP, or it might not be full. We'll have to figure out what exactly the value is when we play test. Um, let's see what the Skype message has to say. What's the last one? What do you mean by what's the last one? Oh, you mean the last race? It's Turtlekin. Christian. Um, right, so you come back to full health, half health, whatever we choose, and you can sacrifice life, health, basically, but animation wise, probably parts of your body to have these big things that you're summoning or creating either deal more damage or make more things. Um, we still don't know what the little guys are going to do. We should probably put this spawn a little guy. A little guy. A little mechanism. Unclear of what they do passively. Probably something that kills enemies. And this will be the one that allows for 2 different kinds of mechs. Different mechs that can be created at beginning your turns in whichever row you possess 3 little mechanisms. 3 little pigs. Says it's a wannabe rapper. Interesting. That's unfortunate for that wannabe rapper, because I've had that name for a long, long time. Or perhaps it's fortunate. Maybe he'll get more of a following. Who knew that he had a whole race of Turtlekin built-in fans? Um, so yeah, basically you kill yourself to make more robots. The robots bring you back to kill yourself to make more robots. The robots bring you back to kill yourself to make more robots. And so it
So on and so
goes.
forth.
Right. Active, passive, basic, passive, active. I honestly don't know what we want to do. Maybe you can, okay, all right, so here's an interesting thought. Maybe when you're dead, you can, you can control one of the little guys each turn if they've been made with a piece of you. If you're dead, if you are dead, you may have target little mechanism, little blood mech, do blank, or perhaps all little blood mechs. So maybe that, I mean, it seems like it's going to have to be this way, that when you're dead, you're able to do certain things that you're not able to do when you're alive, and that's going to have to be the secondary mechanic or the tertiary mechanic. It's just going to have to be. I mean, we have a lot of people, or rather, we don't have a lot of people, but we have the immortal, and he's not really doing stuff when he's dead. He's doing stuff to come back from the dead, and I think that
We need to keep the focus on what happens when he's dead then. So
right,
maybe that's a mechanic.
right. That's what I'm thinking. So I think unlike with the Cabaretto, where you have mask on, mask off, we start creating abilities that want you to be dead, that only work when you're dead.
Or work better when you're dead.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I don't think we want like unmasked, masked, dead, not dead. I think we want like abilities that just work when you're dead, that do something very powerful.
So when you're alive, your focus is getting your machines running and then killing yourself so that
Right,
you can be dead.
right.
And
Are
I like
dead
that.
are more powerful than their counterpart abilities would be on other classes at the same level. So then we need better ways to get you dead. Now we need better ways to kill yourself. Or perhaps just more efficiency. Efficiency. Furthermore, these abilities should never utilize regular little mechanisms as their conduit. All right, so I think the rank 5 active does have to be if you're dead, it does something. Um, but the rank 6 can be a way of maybe getting you dead faster and giving you, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm trying to think, but I think I think this is probably a basic. This will give you two things that you can do while you're dead.
Right.
This will be the second thing. Do while dead. They shouldn't be anything that requires a whole bunch of. Should not require a ton of time or interactive thought. Your summons will fulfill that. Okay. Alright, so we've got all the way up to rank 6 now. Drafted, of course,
Yeah.
which is pretty good. It was pretty quick, given the timeline we've had for other classes so far. For the folks at home, this is not generally how quickly this runs. Usually it takes a lot longer. I've happened to have this idea in a notepad for quite a while now. So, been sort of mulling it over. And I think a few of these ideas are just coming out of that thought space. I don't really have anything much more than this, though. Really. Kind of wonder where we should be going from here. I mean, it seems like the thing we want to address next is those two, the spawner and the thrower. Okay,
Specifically.
passive. Um, if a spawner or thrower is made of more blood mechs than non-blood mechs. I think that should just be one word. Not that we're going to go with that. Then non-blood mechs, comma. Ignore all. Then they take up alternate forms. Period. So basically, you want to make as many blood mechs as you can so that you can get spawners and throwers that are upgraded, which further incentivizes you killing yourself, but also gives you value for doing so.
Yeah.
Don't know how they'll be upgraded. Don't know what it'll look like visually. Probably pretty cool. More animations for Frank to do.
Aw, yeah. He did that animation in a day, so let's just give him all this work.
Let's give him as many as we can to do. I mean, not that it's coming for the demo. The goblins, to make it clear for you guys on stream, the only class that's gonna, or sorry, the only race that's gonna be in the demo are the humans, at least playably. You could see the other races as enemies, maybe. You might have an NPC that's one of the other races, perhaps, just kind of like a preview of a class or something like that. but it's probably unlikely that you'll see anything in any meaningful way outside of the humans, just because of the amount of animation work, concept work, design work, and narrative work that would go into creating something like that by our deadline. Which is unfortunate because the game is balanced for PvP and all of these classes should interact rather interestingly against one another. So our apologies for that. We wish that we could do it. Just don't have enough time.
I'm actually gonna have to step away real fast
That's fine.
from the stream.
All right. So while Logan's gone, if you guys in chat have any questions that you want to ask, or really anything that you want to talk about at all, design wise, reasons why we're doing things, how we're going about doing things, what our design mentality is. Um, I'm free to answer any of those questions. I will say, in case I don't get any questions here, I'll probably just ramble for a bit. I will say that when you are designing, the single most important thing you can do is just do as much design as possible. It might not seem like it's very fun at first, and you might not feel like you're very good, although I think for anyone who spends a lot of time just putting ideas down on paper or prides themselves on having good ideas, which is really sort of an ego thing. But if you're the kind of person who thinks that you have good ideas, then that really shouldn't be so hard. Putting your ideas down on paper, um, letting them come to life in front of you is a very fulfilling experience. And the more of it that you do, the more you'll start to develop your own sort of guidelines and rules by which you you design, rules that you kind of cleave to. And that's not even genre specific, you know. This could be talking about RPG, it could be talking about racing, fighting games. There are a number of ways in which these design systems are cross disciplinary, and some of the most valuable um, methodologies that I've picked up just from doing a lot of design work are are based around how to get out of kind of sticking points, or how to back yourself out of a corner in a maze and go in the other direction, find your way back to that ball of thread that you left for yourself. Um, and when you develop those tools, when you start putting thoughts together in such a way that you can come back to them, like examining an ability not just for its context in terms of what it does mechanically, but thinking about it in terms of character, and then thinking about the character in terms of the narrative, and then um, thinking about the narrative implications of that ability and what it means to the other characters that you're thinking of. I mean, technically that stuff's not quite as applicable in fighting systems or anything like that, but um, I think that the point remains. Those are those are thought patterns that help with RPGs a lot, and they're thought patterns that you can create for yourself for really anything else. I imagine if I'm working on a racing game and we're having an issue where we want to create uh, a car that feels different from all the other cars. I mean, you just go through and you look at all the adjustments you could do, or what happens if we tweak the turn radius, or what happens if we look at the top speed, or can this car use nitrous? I mean, are we playing a game like Midnight Club 3 where you can use abilities and pulse other cars out of the way? Is that the kind of game that we're playing? How do we want to represent this to the player? Is it about animations or particle effects? You could throw particle effects on the car and that'll make it feel different even if it's not functionally different. There are all sorts of avenues that you can pursue depending on what you're working on. Um, all sorts of paths that you can take to get yourself unstuck. It's just a matter of spending enough time finding out what those paths are for yourself. Um, the other important thing about design that I'd like to mention, unprompted, of course, and I guess streaming is sort of one of those things where you can offer advice to people even when they're not asking for it. If you put learning somewhere in your title, is if you're ever working with other people, try your best to take what they're saying and apply it to what you're doing. Make them feel like their opinion's being heard. I don't even do this as much as I should do it, but I've worked on projects before where it feels like your input, or it felt like my input wasn't being taken in, or it was only being taken in when it was beneficial for the other person, when it fit how they were thinking. And it just kind of makes you feel crappy, like you don't want to work on it anymore because it doesn't feel like your own. It doesn't feel like your thing. It feels like their thing that you're helping to make. Um, and maybe it goes back to like the golden rule and just sharing when you're a kid or something like that. And problems tend to become much more serious or carry much more weight when we're adults because, or nearing adulthood, I suppose in my case. Because we attach so much more significance to them because our lives are so much more significant, in our eyes at least. But really, it just goes back to the most simple sort of statement. And the statement that you're sending to someone when you take their ideas, um, and you make them kind of fit to what you want to do, but you don't actually listen to them, is no. Like, as simply as I can say it, you're saying no to them. And what you should probably say instead, is yes and. Like, yes, I really like that idea, and here's something else that we could do that might be interesting. Um, Make it more collaborative for whoever's working with you. Because I can tell you right now, if you're taking on anything the size of what we're working on now, um, you're going to end up having to work with people. And I think everyone would much rather have people like them, uh, and enjoy working with them than secretly hate what they're doing and just not want to tell you because they're too polite to.
Have fun there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was doing one of those things where I answer questions that people don't actually send. Going off on a tangent to fill airspace.
Perfect.
Yeah. But thanks for everyone for listening. Hopefully that helped in some way. I mean, more than anything else, more than any sort of um, truism I found about working in design, I think that the single most important thing is learning how to work with other people such that they don't dislike you. And I'm sure Logan's like, yeah, sure, you've learned that. God, I
Yeah.
fucking hate this guy.
Yeah. Fuck this guy.
Yeah, what a dick. Um, so we're at the last three abilities, strangely enough, and we're even though we're in draft form. I mean, that's a considerable amount done.
And it's existentially fast.
Yeah, correct. Um, I don't know really how far, how much further we want to go,
Mm,
but I'm not like against it, really. I'm not.
I really don't think we should keep going until we get the ones we have solidified.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably a good idea. I mean, do you have any more ideas that are sticking out, like something you wanted to implement into the class that there's been no room for yet, before we abandon it completely and move on to something else?
Not really. I hate to say that, but
If it's the truth, that's fine.
we're pretty much doing what we've been talking about the whole time, and that was the idea to begin with.
Right. Yeah. Uh, I think it's important to stress also that sometimes it's better to take design slower rather than faster. Give yourself some time to edit, to not become so attached to the ideas that you have on paper. Um, Usually, when you're working on something over a period of about a week or so, instead of a period of about a day, you find flaws in it that you want to go back and change. I mean, I'm sure you've all read papers that you wrote back in middle school or something, high school, depending on where you are in your lives. And you look at it, and you're like, oh, I wrote that. What exactly? What part of me thought that that was okay? Or maybe it wasn't a paper, but maybe it's some art that your mom kept on the fridge from fifth grade or something. You're like, oh, did I draw that? Ooh. And perhaps if not that, if I can extrapolate once more, if neither of those were pertinent to you, uh, perhaps you remember a game that you used to play when you were younger that you went back and played recently, or one that you bought that sucked and you just felt terribly about buying it. And you think back on yourself and you're like, why did I ever buy that? You know, it's all sort of part of coming to terms with the decisions that you're making and whether you think they fit correctly to the kind of material that you want to send out into the world or the kind of material that you want to consume. For us, when you're designing games, you have to really be thinking about what kind of consumer you are, what kind of thing you would like to see on the page or play. That might be actually the first part of design, how we all get to that first realm is like, God, this game sucks. Here's what could have been better.
Now, wait a minute. What if I made this game not suck by making it not this game and my game instead?
Right.
That'd show them.
That'd show them, show them all. Yeah. I mean, and that's, it's fairly simplistic, but I think it's true for a lot of people. It was certainly true for me. Um, though I think it was like a little bit more benign for me at first. It was like I would play video games all day, and then my friends would come over, and none of the video games I had were multiplayer, or the ones that I did have that were multiplayer could only be played for so long before we get tired of them. And then my mom would send us outside, and it was like, what are we going to do outside? I don't play sports. You don't play sports. Like, we're unathletic. All right, we make a game. Then you like travel around your yard, and things are much bigger when you're younger. The
Yeah.
scale is much more epic.
This is something I totally did as a kid,
Yeah.
too. Pick up some sticks, just be a fucking little weirdo.
Yeah, tell this story like I'm a ninja, you're a ninja. We got to go invade this thing. We had this big wheat field in our neighborhood. It wasn't like a wheat field, but it was a field of really tall grass. And one day we'd just gotten finished playing Kessen, and we went out as these samurai lords, and we were like roaming through these wheat fields, pushing them aside with sticks. And I'd never felt like a bigger badass in my life.
Yes.
You know, like just something about walking around with fake lightsabers and then dueling each other is so much cooler than, and I can definitely see the appeal of LARPing. Like, who would want to abandon that, no matter what the social stigma attached is?
If you're having fun, then who gives a shit?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And like our in college, actually, since it's two colleges right next to each other, they each have a war every year, a LARP war,
That's cool.
and they do it on the bigger campus. It's pretty cool. It's hilarious to watch the people who take it super seriously because they just get so mad and upset, and I just can't not laugh at it.
I mean, it is really funny. It's funny. It's funny in a strange way because I think deep inside of us, or at least for anyone who played video games who like thinks that they're above doing that, that's not true. You're not above doing it. You would do it if everyone else thought it was cool. If all of the beautiful people were LARPing, everyone would LARP. You
Yep.
know, it's not that audience. I mean, people perceive it as being childish, just like people perceive playing video games as being childish for a long time, and perhaps still
Yeah.
do. It's just that everyone plays them now, so the plausible deniability is not really there. Like, oh, I play video games, but I only play Candy Crush. Like that's still a game.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
You're still playing Candy Crush, or you're still playing Cooking Mama, or you're playing Bejeweled.
Hey, don't diss Cooking Mama.
I'm not. I'm not.
That game's awesome.
I mean, they're well designed games, and that they're appealing to a market that is. gigantic. The spread of that market, like from 5 years old to 90 years old, you know, that's impressive to be able to do that. And I wouldn't knock it at all. It's just that
Yeah.
we've got a culture now that is increasingly just playing games from a very young age, and even older people are starting to play games more now. So I don't know. I think the stigma around video games is probably going to go away at some point, but you have to shoehorn some other group into the box that used to be video games, and I think that LARPers probably fit that
Yeah.
um, pretty well for people. And D&D, I don't think will ever become quite as mainstream, given that you have to let down your boundaries in the same way that LARPing requires you to. You have to actually become a character other than yourself.
I think D&D allows you to do that in what a lot of people would agree with, the safety of your own home.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
that's
like I don't
true.
have to go do this outside in front of other people. I can just grab some buds and just do it right here. That sounds really gross. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I mean that's true. I mean you can play D&D at home. You cannot LARP on a large scale at your house. You have to go find like someone's big yard to do it in, or
Yeah.
some other location. And this has become a whole diatribe on LARPing. But the point was that there are a lot of things that you abandon. There's a lot of purity that you abandon in terms of design choices, and in terms of how you have fun from becoming a kid to being an adult, because of judgments that are placed on you, judgments you place on yourself, lenses that you begin applying to the design that you're putting out. I remember putting games out or playing games as a kid where I didn't care that I was just using the elements and that those were fun and I had a fire sword and stuff like that. Now, if I'm going to put a fire sword in this game, it's got to be cooler than just a fire sword, and it's got to have a system by which damage is calculated, because that's fair. I didn't care about damage calculation when I was a kid. If my sword was overpowered, who gave a rip? I could kill you in one hit, and that was cool to me. But cool to me doesn't work anymore when you're designing things for other people to play. And usually the lens of your childhood experience is colored a lot by how much fun you had rather than the fun that people around you were having. I guess that's where the difference sort of occurs. And that's why LARPing has rules, you know?
Yeah.
You can't just go out and wail on people with swords. If you get hit, you gotta drop a limb and you gotta sit out rounds. I don't think it makes it any more or less fun necessarily, but it does certainly make it less pure. And I think it's necessary once you get to a certain age that it be less pure, that there are rules and structures placed on it so that it's fair. Fairness takes on its own new meaning, because I think, at least personally, when you were younger, there's no real concept of fair that you have, at least in terms of life applied to you.
Yeah. As long as it's fair to me, it's fair to everyone else.
Right. You're not experiencing an undue amount of hardship, or at least I didn't, and most kids I grew up near didn't. You might have issues on one side or another, but you don't perceive them as issues so much then. And so when you grow up and things start piling on top of you and life becomes more and more unfair, you look for escapes that are more and more fair. Things with given boundaries that you can abide by. Systems that have tactical soundness where you can demonstrate that you are very skilled and you can defeat things at overwhelming odds against yourself, to prove to yourself that you're capable of doing what you're not able to do in real life, at least at the moment. And that's why these things are such fantastic escapes, because they have these boundaries, these parameters that life does not have.